Hi, everyone, and welcome to our second panel on being Black in game audio. Despite a public commitment to diversity, Black talent continues to be severely underrepresented and in a disproportionate way in a white game audio industry. In this panel, we'll hear from Black composers about their experiences, problems, and thoughts on creating an empathetic and inclusive industry. I'd like to thank Renee Gittens, the IGDA, the Interactive Audio Special Interest Group, and the Black in Games Special Interest Group for their support. So without further ado, let's get to know our guests. John Hamilton Smith V, aka Sly20XX, is a composer and sound designer whose work has appeared in the VR title Rec Room and Games Without Words, which premiered at the Red Bull Music Academy in Madrid and MIT's inaugural Festival of Arts and Technology. He's currently working on the soundtrack for Calico, a game about magical girls running a cat cafe, the first commercial release from Games Without Words, and now is also beginning work on developing a nonprofit focused on equity in game audio. Devlon Samuels is a teacher by day and a composer and percussionist/drumstick master by night. He is primarily an indie game composer, but also did recent work with the Mega Man-inspired YouTube channel Reploid Revo. I'm guessing that's how it's pronounced. Joshua Matthews, whose artist name is Joe Swa, is a regular contributor to the Materia Collective and is known for his iconic anime/fantasy sound. He recently released his debut EP, Dust, contributed music to Funktronic Labs' Stadia platform release Wavebreak, and is currently the sound designer for an upcoming Metroidvania title, Being and Becoming. Calbert Warner is a composer who has worked on several indie titles and created a wide range of YouTube tutorials for aspiring composers. He is also the co-founder of a minority-owned tech startup called Jump Button Studio that has produced content for influential figures such as Gary Vaynerchuk, Ellen DeGeneres, and the Ace family. And I'm Xiao An. I'll be moderating this panel. All our guests' websites will be linked in the description, so please check out their work. Now, for the interesting part. Well, I mean, not like those introductions weren't interesting, they were, but let's get to the questions. The first question is about Black presence and talent in our industry. And the question is, do you feel that Black game audio presence and talent is acknowledged or encouraged in our industry? And whether you feel it is or not, why do you feel this way?
Well,
Don't get nervous on me now.
This is a good question. I think
please,
it's kind of like not to the, okay, so I think it's a visibility problem. I don't think it's people saying I don't want to acknowledge Black composers or Black talent. I just think the recent Twitter events in recent days, we all know what's happening in the world, but there were a lot of tweets that were just saying, hey, I'm looking for Black this, but I can't find them. So it was just a matter of tracking them down and then making a little bit of a hub or a runway for people to easily find Black people of talent who work in sound design, who work in composition. And I think it's not about, I don't want to see them acknowledged, but do they even exist? And how do we fix that problem of finding them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I second that. I think that visibility plays a major role, but I also don't. How do I say? I think it's also a matter of how much we are a part of the community, because right now I guess I'm trying to find the best way to say this. But right now, especially with what's going on, there's been, of course, a resurgence, if you will, or a lot of focus has been placed on, Black voices in general, and I think that, that's very telling that it's being requested and asked now as opposed to previously. And some of that is visibility, but I also think that there is a portion of that is not willing to take the risk. A lot of what we find in the industry today is a lack of a desire to take risk. And because there is not like a long-standing history of African-American composers in game audio, it's also a risk factor for everyone who's thinking about going in that direction of hiring us. So I completely agree with Cal. I also think that there's that aspect that should be mentioned as well. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something that question brings to mind for me is like, I would say that I get the sense that there is an overwhelming sort of lack of understanding of Black struggles in general, right? I think what we've seen over the last, several weeks is people kind of acknowledging it and coming to terms with it and recognizing it. And I would say that sort of this coming together of people to uplift Black voices, I think, is a reaction to the growing understanding that, like, hey, Black people have it rough. It might be a little difficult. It might be a little challenging for them. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like I would say that no, I don't feel like Black voices are highlighted because I don't think people operate with that awareness. And I don't think it has to look like, I don't think it necessarily needs to look like this, like everyone sort of coming together all of a sudden and saying like, hey, let's give all of this attention to Black people all of the time. But I do feel like, even something as simple as like, if I'm at a networking event, someone talking to me and saying like, hey, what is your experience like? Like, do you feel that things are challenging for you? Like, obviously you want to be sensitive as you ask questions like that, but like that to me would be highlighting. That to me would be recognizing the struggle and sort of responding to it in a way that is more compassionate and more aware of the history of things,
Mm-hmm.
Picking up off of John, I mean, understanding that different people have different struggles, different cultural backgrounds, um, would play a huge role. I mean, it's something that would obviously lead to an uncomfortable conversation, but also we kind of have to get uncomfortable in order to move forward with anything. But the fact that so many people still want to remain in their comfort zone makes it seem like they don't want to. I can't say for sure that that is the case, but that's how it feels, at least to me personally. I mean, we're in 2020, and this is the first panel of its kind. And also with the emergence of people coming out saying, hey, we want to hear more Black voices and stuff. It's great, but at the same time, we've always been here. We didn't just randomly appear like Kingdom Hearts nobody. It's like, oh, we're here. We've always been here, but and I know there are a lot of individuals who do care and who have cared, but for everyone to just come out of nowhere and say, hey, we care now, because a lot of people are saying it and stuff. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like it's more of a trend.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine how sort of it must be such a conflict to want to be acknowledged, but also to see that it only happens when the news is talking about it, and then the rest of the time it's like it's an invisible thing. I'm just speaking of the awareness thing of Black struggles that John was talking about, right? I mean, the fact that this is the first time we've had a panel like this means that probably not many people are having these conversations and not even having that opportunity to get uncomfortable. If you search on Twitter, game audio and Black, you will find Black Friday posts going back a while, and you're not going to find anything really too much about being Black in game audio until this panel. And then obviously in the last week, there's been a lot of posts about that. So, I think everyone's been making great points about that. And speaking of sort of being aware, right, of Black struggles and being able to have these uncomfortable conversations, right? I think I'm going to guess, right, and tell me if I'm wrong, that all of you have probably felt some pressure to present yourselves in what might be considered a white way, right, in professional situations, right, because it is that Blackness that makes people uncomfortable. And so could you tell us a little bit more about how you felt this kind of pressure, and maybe if you have any thoughts on how harmful it is and what we can do about it?
I definitely have some thoughts about that. So,
Woo!
so, all right. So I guess first of all, I'm sure many of us can relate to the concept of quote unquote the Oreo, right? You know, black on the outside, white on the inside. That is definitely something that I got growing up. It's so yeah, like blackness is something. First of all, blackness is something that has an identity to it. So that's kind of one of the first things. Like there is a such thing as Black culture, right? Like they're African American vernacular English, right? Like there is a style of speaking, style of presenting. There's kind of this, and please correct me if I'm sound ridiculous, but there's an affect. Like honestly, I find that I am more in tune with my Blackness when I personally am being like more exuberant, more expressive, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And that exuberance is something that I've been able to bring into my personality, like at large. But I do feel like in order to be taken seriously in a professional context, I do need to reflect that in a way that is not like overly or overtly like African American. You know what I mean? It's just like, it doesn't feel, on the few occasions that I have been in professional contexts and I've been comfortable being sort of Black, quote unquote, but not in the presence of like other Black people, I can remember very distinctly feeling like misunderstood, not feeling really well received. Like even as I was with people who were comfortable with me and I was comfortable with them, I did get the sense that like, you know, it wasn't the thing to do. It wasn't the way to be in order to be accepted. So there's this like whole really significant aspect of my personality that just is not being shown and shared. And that, to a certain degree, like, you know, there's this phrase that networking is making friends, right? But like, and I have feelings about that I can talk about, but like, it's more challenging to make a friendship if you're like very intentionally hiding a portion of who you are, you know?
Yeah, so ooh, you touched on something, John. I mean, from my personal experience, that really started at home, really. When just to share with the audience, when you are, and I think that most of us here on the panel can attest to this. Growing up in a Black home, you are told that you need to be better, first of all, just by sheer virtue of the fact that you are Black. All right. And in addition to that, that you need to make sure that you articulate everything, that you speak in a certain way that is digestible for those who are white or non-Black. Because to be ourselves, to be expressive, is seen in society as a bad thing. It's like John was saying, it's overt, it's much, as they say today. It's a lot. It's just over the top. So it's like there's almost like you have to like filter yourself into this pseudo version of yourself, you know. And I personally have experienced that throughout my entire professional career. I've actually worked in multiple industries, and you know, telecommunications, banking, everything like that, but also in game audio. And there's a thing, and it's because there's an expectation of you as a Black individual, as a Black professional, to make sure that you conform. You know, this is an outside perspective, of course, but there's a pressure, very subtle but present pressure, to conform the way that you speak, to conform the way that you respond, and the way that you behave when you're in the presence, especially of, you know, white professionals. I've experienced it so much, and it's kind of gotten to a point where I had to actually check myself, because I didn't really understand that I was putting myself through this filter. I didn't understand that I was conforming in this way, because it wasn't something that I was seeking to do overtly. It was instinctive, and it's something that's been with me for so long as a means of survival, right? Because when you're communicating, the objective of communication is for the other person to receive the message that you're sending out. In this industry, unless you send that out with a flavor that they're familiar with, it's immediately going to be rejected. Yes, there are cases where it's accepted, but I've had scenarios where the opposite is also true, which is, going into the realm of stereotyping. I've had scenarios where a person has talked to me and they were like, "Hey man, did you hear that new song by, fill in a blank rapper," kind of thing, right? And I'm like, "No, I haven't heard that." And they're just like, "Wait, you haven't heard blah blah blah?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." Well, I mean, do you know who they are? No, I don't. And so there's this, like, you can deal with it on that end of the spectrum as well, where you are expected to have that heavy blackness, that heavy expression, where you are exceedingly loud or and I'm not saying that, our people are like that. Some people are, you know what I mean? But that's not a color thing. That's just people being people, right? But there's an expectation that if you are Black, you are supposed to be that way. And when you are not that way, then you're classified as acting white, speaking white, And so I think that is a whole nother kettle of beans to touch on. But yeah, those are my views. Yes, there is definitely a pressure in the professional realm, especially in game audio, for you to come off as white, for you to communicate white, for you to act white, or to take on a white persona, if you will, for your own professional survival.
Mm-hmm. Before Kel and Devlin jump in with their answers, I just want to kind of highlight something that you said, Joe, about needing to sometimes be Black on command. It's like when they want you to do it, and then you do it. It's, I mean, so it's just sort of like, I mean, I just wanted to condense that and sort of see, show people that that's a thing, that your identity is unacceptable until someone, whoever that person is, decides, that now is the time that you can be that thing that I think you are.
That.
So sorry to cut in like that, but Cal and
no.
Devlin, we'd really love to hear from you.
Oh no, I was gonna mention, like, just going off of what you just mentioned, like when they have that expectation that you are, now is the time for you to act like this Black stereotype, of course. They also change the way that they speak to you using the most modern slang or slang from the 80s, or just they go way back to things that people don't even say anymore, to, the new stuff that teenagers now of any color say. And I mean, this is a game audio. This is in every industry, any professional industry. I had an interview with someone in my home a few weeks back with just an investigation, of course, and she saw that I was a young Black male with, dreadlocks and all of that. She's changing up the way that she's speaking. I'm confused. I don't understand what she's saying, but you can also hear in her voice that it's completely unnatural, and she's doing unnatural movements with it. And I'm just sitting there like, you totally lost me, but I'm just gonna, I don't know. Maybe this is a very insensitive, but I don't know. Maybe it's out of kindness, right? She's trying to be culturally sensitive, but you totally stereotyped me. I don't speak like this, and neither does anyone in my family. But also, in addition to our expectation to act white, dress white, be white, it's also, I mean, sound white. There is the self-taught non-musical vocal training, so where we raise our pitch to an almost unnatural point because our natural voices will sound intimidating, even over the phone. Like the person that we're speaking to, their voices, their tones will change, and you can tell when they sound a little bit less comfortable. So I'm like, all right, let's bring it up a bit. And when I do that, it's like they're back in it. And I'm like, all right, So, I mean, can't do that forever. It's unnatural for me, for us, but
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm. And sorry, Cal, just before you jump in, the thing you were saying about people trying to be culturally sensitive, it's like the fact that they're doing that is making you other immediately.
Yes.
Right? It's like saying ni hao. It's
Right.
all right. Cal, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, everyone here hit the nail. They basically buried this topic and put it in the coffin. This is 100% true. The code switching, the idea that you have to be someone, the filter, as Joe mentioned, this is all 100%. I mean, I think about this daily. All right. I think that I've been kind of conditioned to acting in ways that make other ethnicities feel comfortable, and I became okay with that. And I didn't realize how bad it was until actually I'll put a little positive spin on this. A couple of years ago, I went to the Game Developers of Color Expo, and this is the first time I'm really going out to game events, and I see Asian developers, white developers, indie and black, and I felt like it was a big melting pot of everyone, and they were just being themselves, right? So this is the first expo I go to when everyone just feels like a family member. It felt like a cookout rather than an event, you know, it just felt like a family cookout. Like I knew everyone already. And I'm like, okay, if every event is like this, I'm down. And then I go to GDC, right? So GDC was honestly the mecca of everything. And I loved it. And I swear by it, I think everyone needs to go. But it was a lot different, you know, it was a lot more spaced out. I think that there were not that many black developers or sound designers or composers. It was just was hard to find them. And truthfully, I never actually spoke about this, but I had an audio pass, and in every audio pass, I went to every audio meeting I possibly could, and I was the only black man in the room. And so my thought was, well, this is my first GDC. I'm pretty sure there are people here who have been coming for, you know, annually for decades, and maybe this is their first time seeing another black person in the room, or maybe they normally see one or two. And in that sense, it actually was a little bit opposite. I didn't feel like I had to be more white. I feel like I had to be, at that point I realized I better be black, but I better be taken in a way where it was not to be construed as a fan or someone who's just there for show, or someone who's just happened to come to this event because his friends were there. I wanted them to know that I was black and part of the industry. And I just did that through being as active as you know, as participatory as I possibly could, basically just always involved in every conversation, asking the right questions, answering the right questions, and just being there, you know. And I think it's something that we all have to deal with. Yeah.
You are right. You guys buried this topic. So now that we sort of leaned towards, you know, these industry events, and, you know, and it's kind of adjacent to the whole, you know, when you go to an event and you're trying to get hired, you know, and you're trying to show people what you can do, right? So do you ever get asked immediately, without maybe necessarily people knowing the kind of music you write, do they ask you to write black music, or music that they automatically assume that you might know how to write because you're black?
Can I
Joe, you sound like you got something to say.
Oh, Father Abraham. Okay. So man, this right here, and it's interesting because I've actually spoken at length with both Cal and Devlin about this very topic. This is very much a thing. It is you are immediately approached. So we are here all on this panel. We are all music composers, right? Meaning that we can write music in a multitude of genres and styles. Okay, this includes orchestral. Okay, that's key, right? Oftentimes, if someone, like the moment that I mention that I'm a music composer, the first thing that's coming out of their mouth is, "Oh, you make beats." See, immediately. You see how that triggered everybody, right? That's the thing. That's the thing. Okay, and it's nothing against our beat makers out there by any means, right? Because that is a discipline all on its own. You know, that's why I find it disrespectful, because immediately it makes beat makers out to be, oh, this is just basic. And it's like, no, it's not. That is its own discipline. Okay. But yeah, you can tell this triggered me because it's like, that needs to stop. Okay. That just, there's no discussion that needs to be had. There's not a conversation that needs to stop. Ask what it is that we bring to the table and listen to what we've already written so that you can understand what it is that we provide. That's really my view and take on that whole thing. It is it's disrespectfully presumptuous to come to a Black creative in audio and to immediately assume that, oh, they can make the bombest trap beats ever, like that. It's a thing. It is, and it's unacceptable, and it's disrespectful to those to hip hop producers, R&B producers. It's disrespectful to them, but it's also disrespectful to all of us who, and I'm sure that my brothers here on this panel can attest to this, that we go to great lengths to learn and educate ourselves on orchestral writing for the very fact that we are immediately stereotyped as beat makers. Like I'm self-taught. Okay. So like, I'm in here combing through books and sitting down and studying different, progressions, studying orchestration and all this other kind of stuff. Right. And I am also in that same breath studying beat making separately, I might add, so that if a client comes to me and they need that, I'm already ready with it, But I just think that it does such a disservice to the time that we put into educating ourselves on all the different styles of music. There's jazz, there's rock. I mean, like, it's funny because a lot of us write rock music. You never know, though, because when a person approaches us, immediately it's just like, hey, I need a beat. Can you handle this for me? Meanwhile, this is in complete opposite for everyone else. It's like they go to, white and Asian, other composers of color, but predominantly like white composers are approached for orchestral music. That's the thing. You don't see many of us in general, but you see even less of us being brought in for orchestral projects. And that's something that needs to change.
I just want to say I laughed because I cannot make beats. I cannot make beats. There is one cue in the Calico soundtrack, and it is a hip hop cue. And I get something that sounds kind of okay in like a day or two. This hip hop cue took me 6 days, and it was bad for all 6 of those days until the last day. And I think around day 3, I was like, oh, this is hip hop. That's why it sounds terrible, because I don't know what I'm doing, right? But that's something that kind of popped up for me. But one of the things that this is relevant to the question, it's not super relevant, but one of the things that I want to say is that I had the opportunity to take a class called Music of the African Diaspora. Excuse me, I don't know how to pronounce that word. When I was at Berkeley, and it's more or less, it's a Black music class. And what we learned in that class was basically every genre of music that is not classical, because pretty much every genre of music started as Black music. It was music that was like invented by the Black community and then adopted by non-Black communities and then popularized and then marketed, and then it sold more, right? To the extent that there are specific songs in history where a Black group made the song and then a white group covers the song and then that becomes the famous version, right? So like, just as kind of a point of history, like pretty much all music is Black music, but that's not the way we see it,
Well, certainly not going to argue with that, because the chart going around on the internet showing sort of the origins, all going all the way from West Africa, until the music of today, and anything that's worth any money now that's not specifically, orchestral music is originating from Black people. And I think it's really important that we remember that as musicians, we remember that's the roots of almost everything that you do.
So when a
Cal and
person
Devlin?
asks for black music and then you give them black music and then they say, oh, but I thought, where's the blackness? And I'm like, you just heard it, you know? But I mean, that's a whole nother conversation that, again, takes people out of their comfort zone and, they don't really want to hear it. But yeah, so two things, personal experiences on both. Let's see, start with which one. So one was a conversation with me and a professional. One is a conversation with actually my wife and some other individuals. So I'll start with my wife. She's having the conversation with a group of people. Some are actually game developers, and she's like, whoa, wait, my husband does this kind of stuff. She works with these people. Let's have this conversation. And, you know, they knew that her husband was black, and she was like, hey, he actually is a music composer. Music composer. Oh, yeah, so he's a DJ. Okay. I actually,
Oh,
that's another discipline on its
Father.
own. I don't know how to DJ at all. I'm like, oh, it's got a lot of pretty buttons, but that's, yeah. And another question, oh, okay, wait, right. So he's a rapper. And the third question was not even related to me. The conversation is about music composition for video games. The third question is, he doesn't sag his pants, does he? And it's like,
What?
okay, well,
Wow.
no.
I'm not even gonna.
Okay,
Nope.
that's extreme.
Nope.
Yeah, she was very, very, very upset talking about but anyway, the conversation was over. But on my end, I was having a conversation with an individual because I wanted to present myself, and I mentioned that I write in various genres, but I've taken a liking to, orchestral compositions. And it's weird because I mentioned compositions and that somehow translated to making beats, which again, I can do that as well, but it's not what I said. And when I mentioned orchestral, it's almost like it was very unbelievable. And because I didn't meet the expectation that he already had in his head, like, he immediately seemed very uninterested. The conversation didn't last long after that. It was just like, of course not. And if you say that he didn't say this, but this is the way it made me feel. Like, you said you do orchestral music, but that can't be it. Maybe you're a beginner in orchestral music. Maybe you don't even know which side the violin pans to. And that was that conversation.
oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh man. I
Mm-mm.
think this is a tricky one. So unlike these gentlemen, I've actually been under the guise of composing for many, many years without using any likeness of my face or person at all. I remember doing this purposely. I definitely used the logo for most of my career. And when I finally made the switch, it wasn't long ago when I made the switch to actually using, like, hey, I'm actually existing. I got a couple of DMs, and a lot of them were like from people just saying, "Whoa, you're black, you're not Asian or white," and I'm not like a robot, so I'm sure there was like 30 to 40% that was actually comical about this. So, but then when you think about the other 70, 60%, it's like, why couldn't I have been black this whole time? And you have to think about it as in like the sense of why does this music have to be white or Asian? So I never was asked to write black music because they just assumed what I was making was not black music. It was just white or Asian music. So I understand where you guys are coming from. I've never been approached to like write like trap or anything like that, even still. But I do think that the fact that is if I had been composing using my face the whole time, I probably would have gotten the same questions you did.
I want to real quick jump in. I made a very intentional decision to use my face as my picture, even though I would have preferred a logo like back in the day. And that is because my name is John Smith. And as you can imagine, people don't necessarily expect an African American gentleman when they see that name. So I just wanted to just get it out of the way, just right up front.
Right. Okay, so I mean, like, to those people that couldn't believe that you weren't white or Asian, I mean, like, isn't anything with a backbeat is from Black music?
Right. It's crazy.
Right. And I mean, you write pretty synth heavy stuff. It's got a groove and stuff like that. Why wouldn't a Black person be writing that? It's a ridiculous question.
Absolutely. We got to figure that out.
Okay. So we're going to change a little bit here, and we're going to start talking about the sudden fashionable activism that we're seeing everywhere online. And when the protests began, right? I think we were all having a conversation, right, in that Facebook chat group, and some of you mentioned that organizations started suddenly offering you gigs, and for some of you, there was a very specific flavor about how these gigs were paid, also. So could you tell us more about that and sort of your thoughts on that? John, I mean you.
Oh, sure. Sorry, I just noticed I had been starting off these things a little bit, so I wanted to give someone else a chance. But no, so okay, so it's that's an interesting thing, because I'll say also, I recently, kind of as a result of things, I started a Discord called Black In Game Audio. If you type in blackingameaudio.com, you can go and join the Discord server. And there, in addition to like things that have come into like my life specifically, I also there were a few inquiries that came in where people were like, hey, I want to post about this thing in the server. Is that okay? And I'm glad that people are asking, because I very specifically in the server, one of the rules for like the opportunities is like, do not post predatory opportunities, like quote unquote opportunities. And that is like, I don't even know how to say it. Like, I don't know if it's related to race. I honestly don't, but I do feel like just one of the things that I notice is that people, one of the very first sort of opportunities that I was given out of college, I remember I went to this person's house, and I'm so sorry if he's watching, but this is what happened. I went to his house and I played a little bit of piano for him and his partner. And it was this like, I thought it was a beautiful home. It was like nice and expansive, nicer than anywhere that I've ever lived. And they've got like this upright piano, and like it seems, it's kind of a cool place. It seems like they're kind of doing okay. And then I look at some VR projects, and he's like, "Yeah, what do you feel about working with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is my rate." And he was like, "Oh," and he basically said, "I was hoping you'd do this for free." And I was like, "No, why? No, no." So
$3.99.
Right.
Nah.
So like yeah, I don't know. I want people to stop. That's kind of my comments on that. I mean, I don't even know what to say, because like, and I'm sure like creatives of all, creeds can relate to this. You just, I can't take it personally, because I have to just keep it moving. I have things that I need to do. If I were upset at every ridiculous thing that happened, I would never get anything done. And so, if someone says something racist or ridiculous, or like, I just ignore it. It's the best of my ability, because you don't want to be that guy, because then you got this whole problem. Sorry, I feel like I've gotten off topic. Is that a good answer?
No, this
dude,
is a good, yeah,
That
this is a good
was-
answer.
It's a
Yeah.
very
It
black
actually
answer.
kind of it reminds me of a LinkedIn post that I saw from a Black professional who said, "Oh, now you want to hire me. It's not because of my MBA. It's not because of my years of experience in sales, my increasing sales, my knowledge of marketing, all these extra qualifications and certifications that I have. But now you want to hire me. I wonder why." or something along those lines, and kind of when you told me, John, about people reaching out to offer you gigs at cut rates, at low rates, when the protest started, it's sort of this performative activism, right? Because they're going to, no doubt, your face is gonna, if you did work with them, your face would show up somewhere on their social media, and it suddenly gives them cred. I mean, the rest of you, I mean, like, have you experienced something like this? When during sort of a national or global outpouring of activism feelings, I mean, do you see sort of people getting used?
So
that's the question.
Yeah.
This is crazy because, I mean, I don't know if this like really applies to game audio necessarily, but I do realize that there are some people who have authentic and genuine intentions. And then there are also people who understand that they just need to maintain profit, and most of their attention does come from Black people, right? From whether it be their contributions or their funding, whatever the case may be, and it can boost their marketing, PR, and that is very much a thing. I haven't really, I think it's like this. It's really hard to differentiate who is who in times like this, right? It's hard to say who is going to be there for me seriously in an authentic way and who's there to just kind of fill the pockets. And this is actually why I feel a little bit weighted and frustrated, because like I see so much of it and I don't know where to trust. So I just end up not trusting anybody, which is kind of a dark side of it, right? And it feels bad. Like I've gotten a couple of emails like, hey, this is this group, we're doing this initiative, and as much as it sounds good on paper, it's just like I just don't know, and I just choose to completely ignore it at this point, rather than even think about taking that risk of being someone's puppet. I know it sounds a little bit dark, but it's just how I've been feeling. So at this point, I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna ignore everything.
Interesting, Cal. So, like, when these opportunities come by, I mean, if you don't know who to trust, I mean, you don't take those up. And oh, sorry, Joe, did you want to say something?
Oh, no. I'm listening to you right now. Please continue.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, if the opportunities come by, and these are rare opportunities, of course, right? Because like on a regular day, this industry is horribly difficult.
Yes.
And when an opportunity comes out and you specifically don't take it because you don't know if you can trust them, that's pretty powerful, because everyone's grasping for every gig. I mean, the rest of you have any thoughts on like what is, that's a really strong response, and I think people need to hear where that comes from, and where this distrust comes from, and where this fear comes from.
Devlon, you want to
go? Before mentioning the fear and distrust, I did want to mention that there are, well, okay. So I guess when everything started picking up with what, again, to me feels more like the Black Lives trend, is people are looking more into Black composers, not finding any, wonder why. And it is very sudden and perfect timing. Coincidence? Maybe not. Sips tea. And, then, I'm getting emails, ding, ding, and I'm like, wait, I'm getting sales from an album that I released in March. And I was like, okay, that was my first, oh, wait, my second. Oh, then a couple singles are getting sales now too, which, yes, I definitely and deeply appreciate. I'm actually in the middle of writing out emails to the actual individuals. But before then, there was nothing. And even though I do think that the individuals who listen to my music and purchase my music are sincere and truly enjoy my music, because why else would you buy or listen? But the fact that they didn't know who I was before then, or didn't know who a lot of us are before then, up until it became this, yeah, I'm gonna say it again, trend that speaks a lot volume.
Mm.
And I did receive emails for opportunities of being part of certain organizations, learning opportunities and things like that. And as far as whether or not I think it's real, sincere, or just to make face, I can't tell, to be completely honest. But at the same time, like I had mentioned before, in order to move forward, we need to be uncomfortable. So I've taken people up on that. I'm like, hey, okay, let's work together because, well, what they don't know, unless they're watching now, is I intend to make you guys very uncomfortable. And I don't mean it in a non-professional or disrespectful way. It's just, just like as individuals, like race and professionalism aside, if you and I wanted to get to know each other, um, or maybe we come from different cultures, we all have different backgrounds. So there are certain things that are going to translate different for me than other individuals. Like for example, I'm a black guy, and then it would feel like, and if a white guy walks into a store and someone goes up to you and say, "Oh, hey, may I help you?" That's I'm getting a complete different message than my white friend here, but um, those are things that are very uncomfortable to talk about. But if we
Mm.
don't have those conversations, then you're not like Cal mentioned. There's a whole, and John mentioned, there's a whole other side of me that you don't know that I'm keeping from you. So with me jumping in to actually participate, it's also my way of saying, well, let's see if this is just a trend to you or if it's, actually real and sincere. It might just be a trend to make face, but maybe also you really just didn't know. And hearing about it so much, you're like, oh crap, I should have been on this. Well, let me reach out to some people. But
Mm.
we'll find out through getting out of our comfort zone and being very
Mhm.
uncomfortable and awkward.
Just
Right.
oh, go ahead, Lee.
Oh no, please.
I was just going to touch on that concept of being uncomfortable. I think something that's not discussed enough is that being uncomfortable is a skill. Like rather, being uncomfortable is a skill. It's something that has to be learned and acquired through practice. And I think if that is given focus in individuals' lives, regardless of color, I think we will find that conversations take place way more often than they are now. Um, so I'm really glad that you touched on that, Devlin, because there has been an influx. This is not a question of whether you know organizations are all of a sudden doing this or are they not. Like, no, they are. Okay. Now their intention behind it is going to vary, but the fact that we have all like it's interesting because this is kind of how we came in contact. Well, at least I knew Cal and Devlin before, but I came into contact with John through somebody making a post on Twitter saying, "Hey, we're the Black composers" and everything like that. Now, I'm sure and I hope rather it comes from a place of genuine. They're genuinely looking, because they're curious or they actually want someone. But my thing is this: um, to all of a sudden do that in light of the events that have been happening around the country, it actually shows more guilt than it
Mm.
does anything else. And that's something that needs to be talked about. It's uncomfortable, sure, but
Mhm.
that's a thing because we have been here, okay? And the thing about it is, I know I can at least speak to, like John and Cal. I know that they post a lot. They've been doing it for years, okay? This is not all of a sudden we just started posting because quarantine hit and da 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 da. No, 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 no. They've been posting for literal years. Okay, and I myself have been posting for literal years on multiple platforms. But all of us saw a surgence in people following us once all of the murders started happening around the country. Okay? Yeah, no, I'm just going to call it what it is, because there's no, oh, you know, they did this or no. They were murders. Okay? I'm probably going to be that guy that's just going to call a spade today, because like there's so much that's happening right now. And for us, like, let me speak for me, okay? For me, as a Black man, a Black creative, you know, which it shouldn't even matter whether I'm Black or not. It should matter, like my music should be able to tell you whether I'm right for your project or not, period, okay? But the way that I feel and the interactions that I have had over the past like month or whatever, you know, since I guess these posts started going up and everything, is that my Blackness is all of a sudden of value.
Yeah.
Okay? Like me being Black. And here's the worst part. It's not about me being a composer. It's about my Blackness.
Right.
That is a problem. Okay? Because that is, I mean, racism has many forms. Okay? And to give credence or value to somebody because of their ethnicity, because they're Black, white, Asian, Spanish, whatever, that's wrong. It's not about that. It should be about the skill level of the person, because that's acknowledgement of the hard work and the years and the time and the sweat and the tears that they've put into building themselves as a creative professional. And I mean, personally, I want to think positively of the things that have happened, because as a result of these threads, I've been able to come in contact with so many of my fellow Black creatives. It is, I mean, just overwhelming, you know, in the best way possible. You know, it's like I would be on this thread and you would just see all these names. I'm like, oh, I'm following you and you and you and you. Oh, you're amazing. Oh, you're great. Oh my gosh, this is great. You know, it's awesome. You know, but the flip to that it concerns me. It's what happens when this is not a trend anymore. Is it all of a sudden that, you know, because the thing is that as Black composers, we already deal with the fact that we are in a minority of a minority. Okay? Like the fact that we are Black puts us in a minority. The fact that we are Black composers puts us even in a smaller category from there. And we have to deal with that on a day-to-day, you know? And I just find it interesting that these opportunities have popped up, and that these opportunities have come in this time period. It reflects guilt. Okay? And I'm not saying that to you know, to cause people to withdraw opportunities from anyone. My thing is, if you're going to offer these opportunities, you as the person offering need to check yourself hard on your motivations and your intentions, because it's going to show when everything settles. Because one of the things happening right now is that, you know, the victims of the murders are all of a sudden not trending anymore. And it's like, oh, well, they were still murdered. Okay. Oh, what, you know, it's starting to die down. Now it's a focus on, you know, this thing or that thing. And I've even seen people try to change the conversation from the focus on Black lives being snuffed out, okay, to all these other topics. Oh, but wait, this thing is happening over here. And it's like, no. Look. Focus, right? Our people are dying. This has been happening for generations, like generations. And I promise I'm not trying to make this, you know, this panel, this kind of thing, but this stuff needs to be talked about. It's not like all of this all of a sudden happened. This has been happening for generations. Our people have been born into adversity, period. Okay? So, going back to me being a Black composer, again, I say to anyone who is looking to offer any type of opportunity, I love collaborating. I love creativity. I love art. If you go to any of my social media pages, you will see that all over the place. I love it. But what I value more is genuineness, integrity. So if you are someone that is interested in working with me, that is what I say to you. Check yourself hard. Because if it comes to light that your actions, your this opportunity is not genuine, I'm gonna call you out. Okay? Because it's not just about me. All right? It's not just about us. This whole panel right now is not just about us. This is about so many Black voices who will never be heard. Literally, Shawn, when you started the chat and we were all talking and everything, you know, I was immediately like, I don't feel worthy to be on the panel. You know, and I don't necessarily I still don't really feel that way. Because I know that there's so much Black talent out there that it's overwhelming. I already know it. I've seen it, right? But they're not offered this opportunity. So the reason why I'm even here is to speak for those who aren't able to speak. And that's what this whole panel is all about. So I know that I went off, you know, in several different directions, but you know, I wanted to touch on that because it's so serious. You're literally playing with people's lives and emotions when you offer them something, and it's not about their skill level. It's not about what you value and the work that they've done. It's about this. Okay? That needs to stop.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
That's
Absolutely
all I'm saying on that.
beautiful.
Joe, that's
Love that.
amazing. And Joe, thank you so much for the vulnerability, and you absolutely deserve to be on this panel. And just, you know, your answers and everything, they're so valuable and they'll be captured forever. So, and I think we're all very glad about that because these are messages that need to be heard. And speaking of what you said about guilt and people needing to feel uncomfortable, and just, I would just like to sort of take something that you said and phrase it in a way that's going to make it extra uncomfortable, which is that brands can be quantified in dollars, right? The power of a brand can be quantified in dollars. There are organizations that do this. Black people are being used to build brands. And if they're not being properly compensated, Black identity and Black people, Black bodies, Black voices are being monetized again. And speaking of things that have gone on for generations, and speaking of all this Black talent that's not having a voice, the game industry really needs to do better to continue this conversation, because this is just a group of people that decided it was time to start something. And what goes on next is really up to you, because the disenfranchised cannot speak up for themselves without being invited to the party. Now, I wish we could cover more topics, but I think on Joe's answer, we have ended on a really powerful note, and I'd like to keep that power there as it is. And so thank you all for speaking. Thank you all for your vulnerability. It has been an honor to discuss this panel with you, put it together, you know, get all these amazing organizations on board. So thank you again to Renee, the IGDA, the Interactive Audio Special Interest Group, and the Black In Games Special Interest Group. We really appreciate what you've done, and we hope that this is just the start of conversations that go on to explore the struggles of people of color, of every gender identity, and any other identifier that you can think of, because there's room for everyone here. Thanks, everyone. All right, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Renee,
you.
for having
Thank
me.
you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you so much.